Watch the film from yesterday. What kind of stands out about yesterday's game?
What everybody else saw, we beat ourselves. I mean, I've never been a part. We turned it over the first 2 plays of the game, turned it over the last play of the game. You can't have 3 turnovers on the road in an environment like that against one of the better teams in the country, and you can't get the ball in the red zone 6 times and score 2 touchdowns. You just can't do that. We knew going in that was going to be a big key to the game. Obviously, we've been good at not beating ourselves. So have they. We've been good in the red zone, and we were very poor in both areas, and it cost us a game.
In the red zone, what did you see was happening when you looked at the video?
A couple of them will be things when we had some momentum going that we didn't execute right. A couple times, maybe they made a good play. But bottom line is, I think we've been in there 21 times going into this game. We'd scored touchdowns on like 17 of them or so. We got in there 6 times and only scored 2. And the play to Sammy was unfortunate that he stepped out of bounds. That would have been one we could have scored. I think we had another one that if we had just blocked it right, there was a good chance we would have had a chance to score. And there's probably a couple calls that could have put them in a better position. I mean, when you lose, everybody looks at themselves. We all could have done something better. But at the end of the day, we didn't get it done, and they did. And that's what they were good at. That's what we were good at. And they executed down there better than we did when it mattered. And that was the difference in the game because they turned the ball over too. Our defense got us some opportunities, got us back in the game. And they took our mistakes and made touchdowns out of them. We took their mistakes and kicked field goals or nothing. And that's what kept us from getting back in the game.
They get 13 quarterback hurries. That's almost roughly a third of Nick's dropbacks. And Sean, at least statistically, had a rough night with Preston. How much of those hurries was on Nick and looking to go on the field, run things, and how much was just the line not doing enough to?
We got to do a better job up front. I mean, and they did. They had 13 hurries, and credit to them. They did a really good job. We knew they had a strong front that was good at not necessarily running around you, but pushing guys back into them, and they did that. And obviously, it affected a few throws. They knocked one down the first play of the game for an interception. It affected a couple. The last play of the game, he got his arm hit and the ball's intercepted. So, and it probably affected a few throws that he did throw. So, I know they didn't sack us as much, but they did put the pressure and they did make the lanes tight. And maybe a couple times we had to throw the ball earlier than we want. But it's a total group effort.
On those 2 passes, not just yesterday, but it's been an issue at different games this season. Are there things that you can do, especially with this off week with Nick? Yeah. Is there even, or because you're in the shotgun all the time, does it make it harder to do those longer drops? Could you even think about like a 7-step is just not even a possibility?
Well, you convert drops when you're in the shotgun. So, in the gun, most everything's a 1-step or a 3-step or maybe a 3-step with a hitch. Well, that would be the same as a 3-step, a 5-step or so. I mean, you can take a 5-step in the gun, and that's kind of like a 7-step. From drops to protections and cutting and all those things, there's different things you can do. Sometimes a quarterback's got to throw through lanes depending on the kind of concept. Other times, they got to get the ball and throw it on time. And, obviously Kansas State. And then, last night it's been an issue more than it has been. And so that's something that with this week off, I'm definitely going to take a look at. Is there something we can do to help prevent that from happening? Or is it more just 2 exceptions? But we've got to cure that because it's responsible for 2 of his 3 interceptions.
What was the thought process on Rock? I mean, using him early in the game and then not really going back to him?
Well, I think, our plan was to play him more. And we had specific plays for him. Some we got him in there and we had to get out of. Others, we were able to run, and of course then he made some really good runs. I think we feel like he's getting to where he's ready. He showed great burst, made some really good runs, and he held on to the football, which was good. In the second half, I think Tim would probably like to got him in a little more, but we were in more protection situations at those times. It just seemed like it worked itself out on 3rd downs or 2nd and 10s, and you try to protect a younger guy and not put him in as many protection situations if you can help it. At the same time, he was probably in on at least half a dozen passes, and for the most part, at least execution-wise, he knew what to do. He didn't have any bust. Maybe technique-wise he could get better, but definitely see his role expanding.
How big is this bye week for him? Is it a good time for him just personally? Because, as you said, you expect his role to expand, and how does that cut into what Cap's doing with his carries?
Definitely would expect it to help him get more. The more and more reps you can get as a young guy, the better. It's just common sense and protections, running the ball, just feeling more comfortable with Nick or Jeremy or whoever. And You know, I think it's a positive for Cap because, you know, you saw last year when Trey got rolling, Cap was a great compliment to him. I mean, he still rushed for over 600 yards. Corey had his stuff. It'd be the same way, just in a little bit reverse maybe, if Cap can now not only get a blow at times, but the change of pace helps. They're a little different style backs, and so I think that could be a positive for both of them. They could help feed off each other.
How about Corey? I think he's had 5 carries the last 2 games, just the one. How's his role gonna develop going forward?
You know, with Corey, he's like a lightning rod. He gets in the game, and everybody knows how explosive he is. Defenses have almost specific plans when they see 20 on the field. They know, bam, they're going to do certain things. And so, you know, we got to get creative and find ways to get him touches because still, you're right, his touches the last few games have been down. Although when he got it, he still made plays with it. So it's a good problem, we feel like, with those guys. But, you know, we've got to do a good job of managing it, making sure that we're getting them the touches when they need it and the right kind of touches.
What's your plan for the tight end H-back position, specifically Braden Smith and Cameron Tony possibly?
Yeah, you know, we've spread it out more the last 2 weeks a little bit. You know, we've still got CJ and Brandon capable of doing that. Brandon's a little more locked in. CJ's a little more versatile. And then we just felt like in more of some short yardage packages last game, you know, Braden's, he can get movement, as Coach Grimes was saying, on a fire hydrant. I mean, he can really drive a guy if he gets his pad set on him. And so we felt like it was good to incorporate him in a third down package. And, you know, we'll look at that more this week and see, does that role expand? How does it expand? But when he was in there, I thought he did really well.
What did you see out of Nick? Sammy said he thought he had a phenomenal game.
Do what now?
Sammy said he thought Nick had a phenomenal game. What did you see out of him?
I don't think he had a phenomenal game. I don't think he played bad. You know, he still accounted for over 300 yards and some touchdowns. You know, he's definitely got a few he'd like to have back. He also made some really good throws. And like I said, we got to be better around him. Some things he could have definitely done better. You know, the 2 drives that stand out for me were, it was 28-20 in the third quarter. And we got the ball twice, and it was, we didn't, those were 2 of our worst drives, you know, aside from a turnover. And when we needed to have a good one the most. And I think Nick would tell you those probably weren't his 2 best drives. But all in all, I mean, he kept fighting. He gave some guys chances to make plays. He did some good things. But we got to be better around him, and he's got to be better. And at the end of the day, you look at it, I mean, give them credit. I told you Jeff Collins would have those guys ready to play. They did a great job. They were prepared, but you can't beat yourself. And you got to not beat yourself before you can worry about winning. And we did about everything you can do to lose that game.
Right, not to make about one play early in the game, but at 21-0, 3rd and 5, 3rd and goal from the 5. You guys call timeout, and then you run a play on reverse with CJ.
Yeah.
What was the thinking on that play?
Well, we talked about a couple plays, and it's just kind of one of those deals. Obviously, if it works, it's a great call, and if it doesn't, it's not. It's a play we've repped a ton. And, you know, they play a lot of man coverage down there. It's good versus that. Part of it was a really good play by their safety, and then there's some things we, you know, are disappointed that we didn't maybe run the play the way we've repped it before. But, you know, looking back, yeah, I'd love to have a different call.
Rhett, how close is Nick to being where you want him to be as a passer? Because I know we heard the goal for him is to be 65 to 70%. Right now, he's sitting at barely over 55.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. I think he's got to be better, especially the shorter passes. I mean, that's where he's not doing as well. He's actually better throwing it down the field right now. You know, some of those high percentage completion balls got to be completed. And at the same time, we got to limit our drops. And I think it goes both ways. And, you know, for the most part, though, I think going into the game, his efficiency rating was pretty good. And, you know, that's at the end of the day. And I gave that percentage, and I probably shouldn't have. Although that was pretty lofty and as ideal because he was right around almost 60 last year. But things are changing. We're figuring it out. And, you know, with the personnel we have, and we got different guys he's throwing to, and it may not be as much about the percentage of completions as it is the efficiency. And as long as we're throwing touchdowns, not interceptions, maybe getting chunk yardages and making the throws on, you know, when we need them, then that'll probably be good enough. So I don't know where his completion percentage will end up, but overall he's getting better. There's still a handful of plays that I really wish he'd have done something different the other night, as does he. But you can say that at every position.
Is Is there an Dan acceptable, no, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Is there an acceptable number of batted balls? I mean, it just happens in football, I know that, but it seems like Nick's getting a lot more of those here lately.
Bad balls?
Batted balls. Like
Batted balls.
Yes.
Oh, no, it's tough. You know, I mean, Nick's not tall, but he's not short. He's 6'1.5", I mean, or so. But, you know, like I said, what do we have? We had the one first of the game last night. His arm got hit on the last interception. You know, I think it may have, some guys in the lanes may have affected a few. There's not a percentage that you want. I mean, you don't want any. And it's hard. If it's quick game or something that's a timing throw, I mean, as a quarterback, you got to be on time to get the ball out. And if you see, I mean, most of the time you're not going to see a guy jump up. And that's why, you know, Coach Grimes did some good things at Kansas State. We've done since on cutting some guys that have helped him. If it's a deeper throw down the field like it was the other night, you know, if guys get pushed in your face, I mean, you know, you can't get that ball batted down. The digs, things running across that aren't timing throws, that's where a quarterback's got to find a lane. And he's got to do a good job of throwing through an alley or throwing through a lane and not get the ball knocked down. Those are things he can control. But a quick game and timing throw, it's tough to ask a quarterback to do anything other than throw on time, because if so, then he's going to be timid and not accurate on his other ones. So it's probably a bunch of things. You know, he could maybe find some lanes on some things. We could probably do a better job not getting pressure in those areas, and then maybe even there's some things we can look at this week that'll help. But obviously this year it's been more of an issue than last year. He's not really grown any, so we just got to kind of really investigate that this week.
Gus talked the other night about coming up with a plan for the second half of the season, evaluate. Can you talk about that process and kind of how that works?
Yeah, you know, we've got 2 weeks, and you know, we're halfway through the season, and it allows us to slow down really tonight, tomorrow, and maybe even some on Tuesday, and really look at ourselves, look at what we've done good, what we've done bad, why, personnel, all those things, and try to say, okay, with what we have and the way our team's kind of forming and becoming, here's the direction we need to really try to focus on to get the most out of what we have to give us the best chance to win and be successful each week. So it just gives us a chance to slow down and focus on us a little bit more than we having to go right into a next opponent, as you typically do. Now, obviously, we're glad we got extra time for South Carolina, but you know, normally by tonight you're in your next opponent. You can't worry about yourself as much. We can try to clean some things up and maybe refocus some things more so than we could if we didn't have the off week.
Was this more? Is it this more about that this week than it was in the first open day, since you've had more?
Yeah, before the Kansas State. Yeah, there's a bigger sample size. We have a better idea. I mean, 6 games in, we should know our guys, know what they do well, know what they don't do well, know what they need to improve on that they can, know maybe what we need to do differently to give our guys a better chance and put them in a better situation. So there's no question the timing of this is better than it was just 2 games in.
Devontae Dancy, has he done enough now to keep that starting job, or is that going to be determined?
Well, he's done well in his time in the game. I mean, he's played good enough for us to win. Been proud of him. We'll look at everything. We'll evaluate everything. It just gives us a chance to, like I said, step back, take a big picture view of everything, and then just see what all changes, whether it's personnel, whether it's, you know, tweaks in scheme, whether it's whatnot need to be made. But been pleased with Devontae overall.
Ray, I wanted to ask you about the offensive lineman more. It seemed just, especially in the first half, Preston Smith just kind of had a free reign. I mean, he blew past a few people. Sometimes he came unblocked completely. What happened there? Was that just some mismatches on the line?
He just beat us some. You know, I don't know if I'd say mismatch, because I'd like to think the guy we had on him is good enough to block him, but he got the better of us a couple times, and it showed. You know, we had early in that first real drive that we weren't turning the ball over. We had a holding call because he just beat us off the edge a couple times. He was able to affect with pressure, and you know, at the end of the day, you know, they beat us in some spots, and you know, I think a lot of those things are hopefully correctable with technique and reps and exposure to things, but he got the better of us a couple times, there's no doubt.
Especially with an additional week to think, Rhett, it's only natural. You hear things on the outside world. Do you start to think in terms of the end of the season and the playoff? Does that and just naturally just enter the thought process of where this team is and what's at stake each week?
Yeah, I know they're not talking about us as much now as they were last week, so you know, all we can do is try to win. Winning takes care of everything. We're in the best league, the best division, you know, we feel in the country, and you know, we got to win. We got to play better than we did last night, and if we win, those things will take care of themselves. And in our league, that's the positive. If you do win enough against who you're going to be playing, that'll at least have you in the conversation. But you know, we lost to a really good team at their place. Credit to them. We don't think we played our best as far as just beating ourselves with mistakes, and we just got to do our best to make sure it doesn't happen again, because the road's not going to get any easier.
Brett, does Saturday's game pretty much cement that Rock has left past Peyton on the depth chart?
I don't know. We'll talk about that. We haven't really looked at it and labeled a depth chart, but obviously we felt like he complements Cameron very well. We think Peyton's very talented. Peyton has a different skill set than Rock, and and Rock has a different skill set than Cap. But you know, just right now with what Cap brings to the table, he's really good. He's solid. He's downhill. He's making yards. But Rock and him seem to complement each other really well. So that's kind of how we're looking at it that way right now. But we still got a lot of confidence in Peyton Barber. Coach Horton and I were talking. He feels good about all 4 of our backs carrying the football. You know, obviously the older guys are better in protection because they're seniors. They've done it a lot more. But, you know, we got faith in all those guys. But obviously we felt like it was time to turn Rock loose a little bit and give him a shot.
Red, I want to ask you that the first time I guess you were on the 11, kind of get close, you had the sack to Nick, and then Nick kind of just threw it up to Duke, double coverage. It looked like he even made any reads on the play,
Yeah.
just kind of lofted it up and
Yeah.
back in there.
First play was a quick game type throw, and they had a linebacker jump in the hole of the slant, which they had not really done. I thought Nick did a good job of not throwing it, because if he would have, it might have gone the other way. And then he scrambled, and he's just got to do a better job of wasting that one. You know, he thought he could pump, get the guy up in the air, and run around him. The guy didn't bite, and he tackled him at the sticks. I guess technically it was a sack, but he's got to throw that away. On the third down call, you know, we felt like we could get Duke in a one-on-one, and that was the first time they'd never shown it. They were doubling Duke and Sammy on the outsides and singling the inside guys. They had a plan inside the 15, 10-yard line to do that. That was the first time they'd shown it. But Nick still, you know, Duke probably could have ran a better route, and it would have maybe not looked as bad as it looked, and it had still almost been a one-on-one. But, you know, in his defense, pre-snap, it looked one-on-one. At the snap, they routed and doubled both of them. That's something they hadn't shown. So we were able to adjust later, and we hit Duke on the inside for a couple. But that's what was the thought process.
Did the weather affect
Last one.
you guys' play calls at all, what you wanted to do?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it got really hard right before half. And we only had the ball really one series in that kind of almost like a monsoon. And, man, we had the double move and we didn't hit it, and that would have been huge. In the second half, it was kind of hit and miss during that third quarter. I know a couple balls were slipped and weren't, you know, as crisp as you'd like, but, you know, we didn't fumble the ball around and all that. So at that point we were down. We were calling the plays we thought we needed. And so we really didn't think of it that way. But I think right before half is probably the only time that if we'd had the ball a long extended period of time, we might not have aired it out a lot just because it was really coming down.
All right.